This is a Ekman Fine Art project lesson, Christmas tree ornament, Santa head. Project lessons are for learning acid-free fine art cast paper sculpture using the Ekman method. You can find them on our website at ekmanfineart.com. For this lesson, we're going to teach you how to do the Santa head or bust with a pipe in his mouth. The kit includes your paper, your bonding agent, hanging elements, and your Santa head casts. You'll have enough paper left over to make this candy cane, which my 4-year-old granddaughter Ellie, first time she saw it, put it in her mouth, she thought it was candy. This is your paper. They're all quarter-size sheets of EFA paper. You have a number 2, a number 4, and a hard paper sheet. Now if you want to make a candy cane, take about 3.5 inches off the long side of that number 4 sheet, measure it, and use a clear straight edge. Here I use a triangle, and I'm going to tear it just a little bit at a time, holding it down hard and tearing it with my other hand, so I can make my candy cane later. Take a look at your Santa head cast, which will need to be trimmed out. Just look it over. You see the face is there, and that's the back of the head of your Santa cast. But there's one thing left to do before you trim this out. The first thing you'll want to do is mix your bonding agent. Add a 1/4 cup of water to a pot on the stove. When it comes to a boil, then add the powder that's in the package from the kit. You'll mix this thoroughly in the water. Here Patty's using a whisk. You could use a spoon or whatever you want. Just mix it up real good. It'll turn milky. Then you'll want to add some ice. The ice serves to cool the bonding agent. As it cools, it gets thicker. Have 2 containers ready. Add this thick bonding agent to one of the containers. After you've added the thick to one container, pour half of that thick bonding agent into the second container. Now you'll want to add water and mix thoroughly. Once you've got that thinned a little bit, you might want to add a little more water. The more water you add, the thinner it gets. Remember though, you can always make your bonding agent thinner, but the only way you can make it thicker is to add more of your thick. Now we're going to release these casts by trimming them out. You can use a knife on a pad like I just showed there, or I use a little pair of fingernail scissors. They're pretty easy too, or a combination of both, but you have to release the cast completely by cutting off all this trim. You'll want to save that trim. You can use some of that later, so I'll just set it aside here. Okay, let's see how these two halves fit together. And if there's a little warpage there, you can bend it or whatever you need to do to make sure that you're going to get both sides fitting together, registered well. Then you'll take, this is the number 4 sheet, the thicker sheet, and I got a straight edge that's a triangle that I can see through. See how much I'm tearing off. These are what I call ready sheets that I'm making the seam, the cast together. Now I have my ready sheets there, and I'm going to need my bonding agent. This is a little thin bonding agent. The thicker the paper, the thinner the bonding agent I find is a pretty good principle to use. So I'm going to go around the inside right on the lip of the casts of both the front and the back of the Santa head. Now I have that pretty much finished, so I'm going to rinse out my brush here. That's just plain water. Now I'm going to fit the front and back together. I'm going to use some pins. These are just dressmaker pins, and this will hold it together long enough for me to register it a little bit better. I'm using some needle nose to push those through there. If you try to push a pin through wet paper, it'll just bend. So make sure you're on a drier side and don't worry about the pinholes. I'm going to show you some bigger holes here in a minute. Patty likes to tape these together. I like to screw them together, and I just use some deck screws here. You want to make sure they're clean. They do have oil on them when you buy them. So I'm going to punch a little hole, starter hole, pilot hole, with an awl, and then I've got an electric screwdriver here, and I'm just going to drive that screw through, and you're going to see how these two sides register together pretty tightly. And we'll just fill those holes after we take the screws out after it's dry. It's easy enough to fill them up. So I got one at the top, and here is a second screw that I'm putting all the way through on the bottom. Now with a burnisher, I'm just going to work my way around this cast, and that bonding agent that's on there will hold it together pretty well, but I like to go around this again just to take care of that seam that you see there with some ready sheets. Before I do that though, there's a little back side of this ball on his hat that's, I don't know, it's flat for some reason. It should be round. So I grabbed some of my trim and I wet it with the bonding agent. The bonding agent's pretty thin. And then I'm just going to make a little ball in my fingers and place it on the back of that, what should be a ball, little tassel on the bottom of Santa's hat there. Okay, now I'm ready to seam it, so I'm just going to grab some of these ready sheets. They're a little long, so I'll tear them in half, some of them. And then I'm going to wet right around that seam where you put the two halves of the cast together. I'll wet the seam strip too, and then I'm going to burnish it. And it's kind of chasing here, just chase it down a little bit. I'm going to work my way all the way around this cast the same way you see me do it here. Then you won't see any seams when you're all finished here, and that's the point of it. That's why we seam it. It holds it together, but it also creates a seamless sculpture. bottom of this sculpture needs to be flat, and mine isn't. Yours probably wouldn't be either, just the nature of this. So I'm going to add some more of these ready sheets. They're fairly thick sheets, but they also fill that pretty well and make it flat. Now I'll burnish it down. Add a little more where I need it. Also takes care of that seam, doesn't it? After I got this filled with the number 4 sheets, then I'm going to dry this. Now I got it dried, I'm going to take out these screws, and you can see those holes there. Now we're just going to fill those. Like I said, those are some big holes, but no problem. We just put some paper in there. These are ready sheets here. Stick them in, burnish over them, and that takes care of the holes. Now I'm working on his face, and I'm using the number 2 sheet here, and you can see I've wet it with the bonding agent and worked the whole face. It's getting kind of soft, and that takes out any wrinkles or areas that need to be smoothed. That's why we use the number 2 sheet. It's fairly thin. It's like adding a little skin there. And this kind of chasing amounts to be almost sculpting in some areas. His face is there, but I want to have a nice Santa face on him with eyebrows and pronounced eyes, nose holes. You might want to build the nose out a little bit and the mouth. Just make the face the way you want it. I'm not going to worry about the beard or the hat very much now. I can do something else with that later. After I have that the way I want it, I'm going to dry it, and I just dry it under a fan. After it's dry, you can work it a little bit more. Just look at it closely, and you might want to do some more with the Santa face. But right now I'm going to work on that handlebar mustache that he has. So I'm going to take a little piece of number 2 sheet, and I'm going to put it right over the handlebar mustache, half of it, and part it's on his right side of his face. And then I'm going to take another one and put it on the left side of his face. Fold it in half, kind of give it a little bulk. Work it in. I think I'm going to put just a little more on there. Just to balance it out a little bit. This is sculpting. You're going to be chasing first and then sculpting on top of that chasing to get his face sculpted out the way you want. This Tuck Tool burnisher that's on our website is really a handy tool for this. It's got a burnishing side, a wood side on one side, and then a metal side that really helps you get in there and create that detail. I'm going to put a little more over his eyebrows here and his eyes just to work them in a little bit. And you can see I'm spending some time on this because I want it to look right. I'm going to work around those eyelids and the eyebrows I'll put wrinkles in the corner of his eyes. I'll get up into those nose holes with something that is a little smaller, like a piece of wire or something. Put those in. I dried it, and now I'm going back and I'm going to do some hard burnishing with the wooden end of the burnisher. It's pointed. This isn't a tuck tool burnisher, although it could be. This is another one that I have. Work on that mouth. This dry burnishing helps to smooth things a little bit better. You can actually put a little bonding agent on there, and it'll soften the surface a little bit. And this is the kind of detailing that you can do in smoothing it. Another way is to use a little bit of grinding paper. I don't call this sanding paper. I used to not use sandpaper because I think sandpaper looks like dirt. But this gray grinding paper is a little different. It doesn't leave a residue on your paper. Here I've got a block, and I've got a little coarser on there to work out the back of this, and you can really do some nice things by grinding this paper. It will create some dust, so if you do that a lot, then you might want to wear a little mask to keep it from getting into your nose and lungs. But I'm just doing a little bit here, and it's getting there. It's getting there. And this is where I think I'm just going to put some bonding agent on there. You could use some water too, but the bonding agent seems to work a little better. It'll melt the fiber of the paper. There is bonding agent in these casts. We cast them with bonding agent, in fact. So that's why it's a little harder than the soft paper would give you to sculpt with. But when I put that bonding agent on there, now I can work those little wrinkles into the eyes and eyebrows. Make them look like hair on the eyebrows and wrinkles on the corner of his eye. And I can wet that handlebar mustache too, and I can work some detail into that, make it look like hairs coming out, and turned up on his mustache. Then there's Santa. I'm going to show you a little trick that we do to create fluff. Now this is that number 4 sheet. I've torn a section off of this so I can make a candy cane. That's something we can do with all of our Christmas tree ornaments, is make candy canes. So actually you get 2 ornaments out of every kit, at least 2. Some of them may be more. This is just a flat razor blade, industrial razor blade I'm using to create this fluff. Here I'm measuring his beard. I want to create separate hairs to make that beard look like it's growing right out of his face. I could use the fluff on there, and I do sometimes, but I just want to show you this trick. This is a piece of mat board I use for kind of a stop block, and I've got masking tape on one side just to anchor that strip of hard thin paper to, and then I'll burnish it down. I'm just using my thumbnail here. So I'll take a pair of scissors and I'll try to cut that as thin as possible on that strip there. So this takes a little patience, takes a little practice, but I'm gonna show you how to do this. If you want to put fluff on there for his beard, go right ahead. I'm going to put it on his hat and his collar and show you how to do that. But this is something that we've been doing for years, and it kind of creates detail that you have a hard time creating any other way. And there's some hard, thin pieces of hair. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut the whole thing, and then I'll detach it from that. And you can see there's kind of an anchor strip that holds all these little hairs in place. Otherwise you just fall off. That board is a stop block. It stops your scissors. I use Fiskars scissors. They're really a nice scissors for working with paper. There's that anchor strip, and I tore off some of those thicker ones that I didn't want to be on there. Doesn't really matter. You can work them in if you don't cut them real thin. You just cut them as thin as you can. You do the best you can. As we get further into this, you'll see it doesn't matter that much. Put a little bit of soft paper in place there. Tore it from my number 4 sheet. Use number 2 sheet 2 there. Just grab the number 4 because it was there, and then wet it and put it right under his lip, which bottom lip I built out a little bit. Now I'm going to cut off that little anchor strip that's there. I make sure that these hairs are actually longer than the sculpture is, because then I can trim it to match my sculpture later. But I wet it all the way down and put those in place, and I'll do that all the way across, and even create some of his, like his long hair that is coming out from underneath his hat that mixes with the hair on his beard. Just wet the tips. Now I've done a few layers of hair on his beard. I'm going to cut some smaller pieces here and put it on his handlebar mustache. Probably get a little more detail when I do this. Since I have the hair, I might as well do it. And I'll chase that in. And now I'm going to do another little piece for the other side of his handlebar mustache. And put that in. Apply it. Chase it in. Bring it up. And now Santa has a pair of detailed handlebar mustache on each side. Then we'll dry this. After I have it dried, I'm going to do a little more grinding. Just sand some of that, or grind some of that paper that's on his hat. It's a little smoother. And I'm going to trim this beard now. Just use a pair of scissors. Get it so it's the same level as the bottom of the cast, so it'll set flat, so it can set down. And that detail, you can see it's hard to get that any other way on that beard. But if you want to just add fluff to it, you can do that. It's a lot faster and a lot easier. But this is how you do the fluff. You have it sitting there, and you just basically wet where you want it. This is the fluff on the top of his, actually the rim of his hat, and I'm going to put it on both sides. I'll put it on the back of him too, where his collar is, and also that little ball that's at the bottom of his hat, where it hangs down naturally. So we'll put that fluff all the way around. On both sides. Here I have another cast of Santa, so I can show you some things I didn't show you with the long bearded Santa. So after I've covered his hat, I'm going to work on his face a little bit. Number 2 sheet, and I'm going to build out his nose here. Layer a couple of those together and stick it right on the tip of his nose. Work it in with my tuck tool burnisher. Work out those nose holes. And work on his eyes a little bit. Put a couple of layers on there. Find where his eyelids and his eyes are. Then we'll dry it. Now on the bottom, like I said, it needs to be flat so you can grind that. And if you need to put a little more paper on, grind it again to get it nice and smooth. That's how you do that. Now we're going to put in this little anchor loop. So I cut a hole in it with an X-Acto knife, work it a little bigger with my tuck tool burnisher, and stick it in. And now I'm going to take some number 2 sheets and fill around it. That'll keep it from coming out. Notice the way I put that anchor loop in there. If you turn it the other way, he's going to hang sideways. So pay attention to how you put that in. Work paper around it and in between that loop, and get it nice and tight in there to seal it. Now I'm going to put some eyeballs in Santa. So I kind of make a couple little small, fairly round, lumpy pieces of paper. I got some nice slits there in his eyes, and now I can work this paper in and give him a roundness on that eyeball that I can paint later and stick an awl in the middle to create those pupils. So we're going to put some fluff on Santa here, and this is how I do his beard. If I want it fluffy, I just put it all the way around. I've dried that little anchor loop in his face, so we can put the fluff on now. Here I'm going to just put an awl right on the top of his hat. That way I can I have something to hold on to when I do the back of him with that fluff. And I'm going to put it on his hat and his collar, and Put the fluff on both. Pick it up with my knife, just put it on, work it in the way I want. Well, he's looking pretty good. I'll just touch up around those eyeballs. Even though they're dry, I can work it a little bit, and then his nose holes. Do a little bit of dry sculpting on Santa. After I've got him dry, I'll take some paper and fill in that awl hole. After I took the awl out, I had a hole there too. Now we're going to do a penetration seal. This is just acrylic glue, that white glue, Elmer's glue, in a spray bottle with a lot of water in it. You only need about 10%. I missed a spot there. That's okay. I can put some of that bonding agent on there and some fluff over top, and go ahead and spray it. This will freeze that fluff, and you might want to do that a couple of times. If you don't think that fluff is getting hard enough, just put a little more of that white glue in there and try it again. For the surface seal, I just used titanium white acrylic paint, and because the penetration seal is so well done, this surface seal will pretty much stay on the surface. It will not soak in. It adds a little more protection to the sculpture. This makes it all that acid-free paper underneath protected, so it'll last for forever, basically. Notice I don't paint the fluff. We'll just leave that alone, and we'll paint the beard, the face, and the hat, except for the fluff. We don't want to paint that fluff. If you paint it, it's going to go down a little bit, and it won't look as detailed. But if you want to paint it, you can, I guess. It's kind of up to you. Now, the fun part, I'm going to paint Santa. This is cadmium red light acrylic. I like the Liquitex acrylic. It's really good. It covers pretty well. When you paint this sculpture, your sculpture, after it's got this surface sealed, you're probably going to have to add a few coats. You go over it a couple of times, letting it dry in between, and work it in. I don't want to get it into that fluff though. I like that detail of the fluff, and I want to keep it looking fluffy. And so I'm careful to go kind of to the edge of it and just end it there. Now I got a couple of coats on his hat, so I'm going to paint around the bottom to show kind of where the beard ends and his clothes begin. And I'm going to paint all the way around him. Now I've got that all painted, and I'm going to work on his face. I find that this cadmium red light mixed with the titanium white Liquitex acrylic really makes a nice flesh tone. So I'm making that flesh tone here, mixing it just with my brush until I have it the way I want. Just a little more red, and then I'll have a nice flesh tone here. And I don't need much, so I'm going to start working on that face, and I don't want to paint his beard or his handlebar mustache, just his face. So Or his eyebrows. I want to leave those white too. I'm going to probably get a little flesh tone on there, but then I can go back and paint titanium white on those eyebrows and get them back. I'm using a small brush to do this. Now I've got his face all painted with a couple of coats. I'm going to paint his mouth too, his lips. I'll get a flesh tone on there, and then I'll come back with a little more red and make his lips a little redder. Since I've painted flesh tone over his eyebrows and his eyes, I want to get a little more white for his eyes, where his eyeballs are, around his pupils, and then also paint those eyebrows on. Do that too. I got a little bit of paint on his mustache, his handlebars, so I'm going to fill that in as well. Now I want to paint those pupils in, so I'm going to use some blue and probably a little black, and I'll put some white in that blue, just to get it lighter. This is just the blue. People with blue eyes have different color blue eyes, so you can kind of make it any color you want. I guess you could have green eyes too. I have green eyes. They turned green when I was in the Marine Corps, like everything else. But get it color you want, and then just paint it right on those eyes. When I sculpted it in, I made sure they were a little bit round, so I could find where I want those pupils to be. I can go around that. I guess I got a little more blue into that eyeball than I wanted, so since it's a small area, I just kind of work on it and get it the size I want it. Okay, I've got that done. Now I'm going to add a little more red to his nose and cheeks, keeping my paint a little thin here. Just add a little glaze on top to give him some color. Now I'm going to show you how I make the pipe. I'm going to sculpt it. You don't want to put a pipe in his mouth. You don't have to, but I'll show you how to do it anyway. So I'm tearing a little piece of paper here. This is going to be the bowl. I'm going to wrap it. This is the number 2 sheet. I'm going to wrap that paper around this little brass pipe. We have a number of different size wires and pipes we use. I just get it at the hardware store. It's a brass rod. It's hollow inside. This is what I call a tuck tool burnisher. I just tuck the paper after I've wet it underneath that pipe, and then roll it on. Gives you a nice layered, thicker bowl. And I make it the thickness that I want here, and then I'm going to burnish it down flat and dry it. And the next thing we'll do is we'll make the stem of his pipe. And I'll do that pretty much the same way. only I'll use a smaller brass wire. We have these in tools under our website, but you can get it in a hardware store too. Pretty much in every hardware store. I'll do the same thing. I'll use my tuck tool burnisher and I'll tuck it under that wire, and then roll it on that wire. It takes a little practice, and you may want to practice this, but you can always do it, and if you don't get it perfect, try it again or chase a little paper on there. After I've dried the two, then I can start working on them again. Here I'm cutting the bowl, the pipe bowl. I want to try to get a straight cut on here, and then you can see I've still got the tube in there. I rolled more than I needed, so I'm just going to cut the length that I think will work with my pipe bowl. If it doesn't work, I have more there to cut on to get the right size. So I'm going to cut all the way around this pipe, and then I'll slip off the bowl. That looks pretty good, pretty even. Now the stem is a little different. I'm going to leave the wire in there because that'll add strength to that stem. I will trim that wire, cut it with some wire cutters, get the length I want, so kind of figured this is as long as I want it. Now I'm going to trim off one end and kind of narrow it down. Now I'm going to bend it. Could leave it straight, but I want a kind of a bent stem. I'm going to cut into that halfway. I've already cut it with wire cutters to the length that I want, but this flat end will fit on the bottom of the bowl, and then I can use some paper to chase it on. So I put the paper over the flat part of the stem and lay it right on the bottom of the bowl, and then I can move the paper around it. I'll chase another piece of paper over that to anchor it to the bowl itself. This is a number 2 sheet, thin sheet. So I'm just going to work it around the bowl here and kind of round it at the bottom a little bit. There you can see I've kind of rounded it there. Put another one on. Kind of work it in with the brush and a little more. It's okay to make this fat because we can always trim some off later. We just want to anchor it really good here because we've got 2 parts, not one metal part. So I'm going to make my stem a little bit fatter where it meets the pipe bowl there. So I'm going to take another little sheet of paper, number 2. I'm going to work Work it on there. Now it's getting where I like this for Santa's pipe. Chase that down a little bit, smooth it a little bit with my tuck tool burnisher. Now I'm going to put a little more right on the tip where it goes into his mouth. You notice that the wire is extended out of that pipe stem. We'll just leave that wire there because that'll go in his mouth and really anchor it in there when we place it in so it stays. That wire makes it really strong. It sticks out of his mouth, so it could break off pretty easily if we didn't have that wire in there. So that looks pretty good. Now we'll take it and we'll dry it. Now I'm going to change the blade in my X-Acto knife here. The new blade always has some residue of oil on it, so I'll wipe it off because I want to carve this excess paper down a little bit. Put more on than I needed just to add strength to it. So I'll continue cutting here, trimming it. You want to be careful not to cut yourself. These knives can come off this paper really fast and put a nice gash in your thumb. You should never cut toward yourself. You should do like I'm doing here, not like I was doing before. Like this. This is a bad idea, but I get my thumb out of there real fast. I don't know if you can be as quick as me. I'll trim the where it goes in his mouth, a stem there. Now I'm going to do a little bit of sanding. Just grind this away a little bit, smooth it down. This is the rough, coarse grain sand pad that I have on this block, and it really gets it down there fast. And after that, I'll go to my fine grain paper and smooth it even more. With the finer paper, you can do those final touches to get it nice and smooth. Work on the stem here a little bit. Get that smooth too, and the tip where it goes in his mouth. Got it nice and small so it'll fit in his mouth, and you can see the wire sticking out there. That wire is kind of nice to be sticking out there because when I paint it I can hold that wire. Now I'm going to wet my my pipe with bonding agent and burnish it smooth with that. Work around there. That looks pretty good there. You see that tuck tool burnisher works in that groove really nice. And this flat burnisher kind of works around the stem. Might want to put a little paper here. I've got a little place where I need to add it. Just to get it even on both sides. I'll work that in. Continue to work this and smooth it. Add a little more paper to it. Then I'll dry it. Once it's dried, I can do some hard burnishing on there, dry burnishing. Just hold it tight. It's a small sculpture, but people look at this small detail and you want to be proud of it. So I did Santa's pipe. I should be proud of it. He sure is. He wouldn't put it in his mouth if he wasn't proud of it. So work all the way around it, and doing this hard burnishing, you can see that's on there pretty good. Just amazing how this paper works. It actually almost is like wood. It's very hard. We'll go inside that bowl a little bit too, round it off in there. So I'm just going to set it down here and ready to do some more sanding. This is what you should wear if you're doing a lot of that. Put mine on. Starting to choke on that dust a little bit. So don't have to worry about it when I wear that mask. Use that block there. You can get this sanding equipment at just about any hardware store. Lowe's is good. I get it at Lowe's. I get it at Ace. Now I'm going to wet it and do some final burnishing. This also takes the particles of paper off of there that's left on there when you grind it. And finish that up. I'm going to go inside here too, just to chase out, sculpt out the bottom of his pipe. Push that in there with a round end, brush end. Kind of polish that off inside there, make it look round. Was kind of flat. You couldn't see that, but I could. Do some more chasing. Now I've got it to where I'm ready to do the penetration seal and the surface seal. So this is the glue. I've already got water mixed in with this. I have a gallon jug there, and I've got a little bit in the bottom. I put water in it. I'm just going to paint. I'm just going to paint this for a penetration seal. It will penetrate that paper real nice, make it really harder, stiffer, even more like wood than it was before. That kind of important thing to do, and it protects it. Okay, I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to do a surface seal. I like to use titanium white Liquitex acrylic for my surface seal. Got my clean water there, got assortment of brushes. I'll dilute this a little bit. It's pretty thick. And go ahead and paint that pipe bowl and stem and inside. Get the whole surface all over sealed. Holding it with the wire inside of clay just to hold it. Now I'm mixing raw sienna, burnt sienna, little red, some black, getting a brown, the color I want. You can make it light, dark, whatever you want. paint the whole thing black if you want it. It's just the way you want to do it. Now I'm going to separate. I'm not cutting this all the way through. I'm just making a groove, kind of where the wood meets the stem, the plastic stem, or whatever that is, bone. Where this part will be brown, and then where I did that little separation score there, that'll be black on the other side. And you can see the paint needs to be applied a couple of times. So put a couple of coats on and make it the color you want. Now I'm going to paint the top of it black, and I'll paint the inside of that bowl black as well. And that's just the Mars Black Liquitex acrylic paint. Now I'm going to paint the stem. It's just Mars Black again. I'll get that all painted. Now we can dry it. After it's all dry, then we can put it in Santa's mouth. So this is what I do. I just punch it with an awl here on the corner of his mouth. I'll put apply a little bit of white glue in that hole and place the pipe in. You might want to try that, make sure the pipe fits before you put glue in there, but there it is. Complete Santa. Pretty cute. Now all I have left is to apply this hanging string. We got gold, silver. I'm putting gold on. Just tie a knot in there, and it's all ready to hang on your tree. And there are many more of these Christmas tree ornaments project lessons that you could do. Just go and check out our website at ekmanfineart.com. You can order these Christmas tree ornament kits as well as other project lessons. Just go to the menu bar here and click on Ekman Method. Once you're there, you'll find our paper, bonding agent, project lessons, and you'll find starter casts, DVDs, and tools. The pictures just represent the categories we have for the project lessons and ways to work in this medium. And we'll go under the Daisy Kit and we'll click there and we'll find these project lessons. There's all the Christmas tree ornaments, and you can click on any of those to order. You can search and it'll come up under search from the menu bar as well. To get started, go to our website ekmanfineart.com to order your Christmas tree ornament project lessons or any other project lessons as well, and enjoy.